Welcome to Ouch. Was that a ghost? This podcast may contain graphic material, which some listeners may find disturbing. Listener discretion is advised.
Help me.
Now that we covered that, here's your host, Liz.
Welcome back to Ouch Was That a Ghost. Before I start, I just want to shout out our newest Patreon member, Justin. Thank you for supporting the podcast, and I hope you enjoy your extra content. So today I'm covering John Wayne Gacy, also known as the Killer Clown. He's one of the most well-known serial killers and is said to be responsible for murdering at least 33 young men in and around Chicago, Illinois. Gacy was born March 17, 1942. He was a Pisces. He was born in Chicago, Illinois to parents John Stanley Gacy and Marion Elaine Robson. They were described as an upper middle-class family. John Wayne Gacy's father was a veteran who worked as a mechanic. He was an alcoholic and very abusive, physically and emotionally, towards John, his two sisters. John was the only boy, the second of three children, and he was physically abusive to his wife as well. John's father often called John a sissy or compared him to his sisters in like a belittling manner. He would beat Gacy as a young child. There was an instance when Gacy was 4 years old and he accidentally disarranged some car parts and his father just beat him. His mother would try to intervene and Gacy's father would call him a sissy or mama's boy. After work, Gacy's father would retreat into the basement, which was off limit to the kids, and just drink until he came upstairs to eat and, I guess, belittle the family more. Their father would trip and then he would flip out at Gacy, saying that Gacy tripped him and he would threaten to kill him. Gacy's own mother said that Gacy's father never gave him any affection. Even in this situation, Gacy still had the desire to get his father's approval or love, as children are supposed to do. That's what your parent is supposed to make you feel, safe and loved. Even though it wasn't reciprocated, Gacy still loved his father and felt he was never good enough. He was said to have a good relationship with his stay-at-home mother and his sisters, but his mother giving the only affection, Gacy kind of saw her as a safe space. Gacy would sometimes put on his mother's underwear. When Gacy was about 5 years old, he was sexually abused by a 15-year-old girl, the daughter of one of his mother's friends. When Gacy's mother and the girl's mother walked in on this, Gacy's mother hit the girl right in front of Gacy. A few years later, 8-year-old Gacy was sexually abused by an older male, a family friend. He was a contractor that would bring Gacy out for ice cream or whatever, and then he would turn it into like this wrestling, quote-unquote wrestling thing, and Gacy never told anybody. I mean, his father wasn't really a safe space to go talk to. Then when Gacy was between 10 and 12 years old, Gacy, along with another boy, were accused of fondling a young girl. When Gacy's father walked in on this, he hit Gacy. So now if you see the correlation, every single time that there's some sort of sexual component, there's usually hitting behind it or violence. Gacy realized around this time that he was attracted to men. He hid this because of the time and because of his father. Gacy was described as a sickly child, having a heart condition. He couldn't play sports, which his father saw as being John Wayne Gacy's fault for having a heart defect. He saw him as weak, and John Wayne Gacy, named after John Wayne, his father even more disappointed that he didn't live up to that name. Gacy wasn't able to make friends like other kids because of his medical condition. He couldn't make play dates. He was sort of alienated at school because of this. At 11 years old, Gacy had an accident that resulted in a blood clot on his brain. One day when he was at the playground, he was hit by a swing. There he was knocked out, and as a result, he would have frequent blackouts and seizures into his teen years. He would frequently need to be hospitalized. His father would say that Gacy was doing this all for attention, that he was faking it. While the clot was said to have been dissolved by medication, who knows what long-term effect this had on his impulses, as many serial killers do have head injuries as children. Due to all this time spent in the hospital, Gacy fell behind at school and he ended up dropping out. In 1960, 18-year-old Gacy got into politics. He started working as a precinct captain for a local Democratic Party. His father criticized him even more for this, calling Gacy a patsy, as his father was a Republican. The same year his father bought him a car, he kept it in his own name until Gacy could pay it off. He held it over his head. When Gacy didn't do as his father said, he would take the keys away. And in 1962, Gacy went out and got another set of keys made, so his father took the distributor cap, and he kept it for 3 days. Within hours of getting the distributor cap back, Gacy took off to Las Vegas with only $136 in his pocket. In Las Vegas, he worked at an ambulance service. Then he worked as a mortuary attendant. For those few months, he watched bodies being embalmed. He would sleep on a cot behind the embalming room. And one night, while he was there alone, inside of a coffin was a deceased male teen. Gacy climbed inside the coffin with the male teen, embraced him, and caressed his body before experiencing what he called a sense of shock. This experience freaked him out so much that he went home. Even though he never graduated high school, he managed to graduate Northwestern Business College in 1963 in Chicago. That same year, he got a management trainee job at the Nunn-Bush Shoe Company. The next year, in 1964, the company transferred him to Springfield, Illinois, where he worked as a salesman, and he was later promoted to department manager. While he worked for the company, he met Marilyn Myers, a coworker, and in March of 1964, they were engaged. During the time they were dating, Gacy joined the JCs, which is a social club for young leaders between 18 and 40. He claims that one night, another member of the JCs got him drunk, and Gacy ended up spending the night on this guy's couch. While he was intoxicated, Gacy said that the man performed oral sex on him, this being his second homosexual experience. Gacy and Marilyn were married in September 1964, and Marilyn's father bought 3 Kentucky Fried Chickens in Waterloo, Iowa. The newlyweds moved to Marilyn's parents' old house in Waterloo, Iowa. There, Gacy was making a good salary. He was making about $15,000 a year, which is the equivalent to over $150,000 today a year, on top of a portion of the restaurant's profits. So he was making good money. And Gacy established himself in the community. He was well-liked. At the Kentucky Fried Chickens he managed, he hired young men and young women, and he would invite the young men back to his basement, which he made into a club. He would lure them back there by offering free booze or pornography. Once he got the young men back there, he would try to get sexual favors. And if he was rejected, he would say, "Oh, that was just a test," or "Oh, I was just kidding." The couple went on to have 2 children. They had a son in February of 1966 and a daughter in March of 1967. Gacy, who had a good job, he was married with a few kids, seen as an all-American family. He later would describe this part of his life as perfect. His father even visited him during this time and apologized for his treatment when he was younger and told Gacy that he was wrong about him. Gacy, still involved with the local JCs, he would attend meetings or gathering after his long days of work at KFC. At the meetings, he would bring chicken and would have everybody call him the Colonel. At this club, they would engage in drug use, pornography, prostitution, wife swapping. And in 1967, he was named Outstanding Vice President and would go on to serve on the board of directors. In August 1967, Gacy lured the son of a fellow JC, 15-year-old Donald Voorhees Jr., back to his home with the promise of pornography, and once there, he sexually assaulted him. Over the following months, Gacy would sexually assault other young men, including one that he persuaded to have sex with Gacy's wife, and then he blackmailed him into performing oral sex on Gacy. He would tell some of the teens that he was commissioned to conduct homosexual experiments for research and would pay them $50 each. In March of 1968, almost a year after the attack, Donald Voorhees Jr. told his father about what Gacy had done. His father, in turn, went right to the police, and Gacy was arrested, charged with performing oral sodomy on Voorhees and the attempted assault of another 16-year-old young man. Gacy denied that anything happened and demanded a lie detector test. When he took the test, the results were indicative of deception. Gacy still maintained his innocence and claimed the accusations were politically motivated, and Gacy was charming enough that some of the JCs believed him over the victim. Gacy hired one of his employees, named Russell Schroeder to go beat up the victim to scare him into not testifying with the promise of $300. Russell Schroeder did manage to lure Voorhees Jr. to a park alone. There he sprayed him with mace and beat him up. Voorhees Jr. did get away and reported it to the police, and he identified Schroeder, who was arrested the next day. At first, he denied having any part of it. Then he admitted it, saying he did it because of Gacy. Gacy was arrested and charged with hiring him to intimidate and assault Voorhees Jr. But good for him, Voorhees Jr. testified anyways. Gacy was ordered to get a psychiatric evaluation at the Psychiatric Hospital of the University of Utah. There, 2 doctors found that Gacy had antisocial personality disorder. Gacy pled guilty to 1 count of sodomy with Voorhees, but not guilty to the charges of the other young men. He said that Voorhees Jr. offered, and Gacy acted out of curiosity, but that was not believed. Gacy was indicted on the charge of sodomy of the 15-year-old and sentenced to 10 years at the Anamosa State Penitentiary. That same day, his wife filed for divorce. They divorced, she got the kids, the house, and Gacy never saw his wife or children again. While incarcerated, Gacy was a model prisoner. Within months, he became head cook. He joined the inmate chapter of the JCs, increasing membership. He increased inmates' daily pay. He did a lot of projects to make inmates' lives better, including getting a miniature golf course for the inmates, even getting a Distinguished Service Award in 1970 for his works while in the inmate chapter of the JCs. In June 1969, Gacy was denied parole. In anticipation of his next parole hearing, Gacy finished the 16 high school courses he needed to get his diploma, which he completed. And during his prison stay, Gacy's father passed away of cirrhosis. This was on Christmas Day, 1969. Gacy wasn't allowed to go to the funeral and never got to clear up any daddy issues he had. And after serving 18 months of a 10-year sentence, the parole board released him on June 18, 1970, with 12 months probation, with the conditions that he goes to live with his mother in Chicago. His family and friends were completely unaware of his jail stints or run-in with the law. He was released from prison and hopped on a bus to Chicago, arriving the next day. Once there, he got a job as a short-order cook. The next year, on February 12, 1971, Gacy was back in cuffs again, after a young boy claims that Gacy enticed the boy into his car from a Greyhound bus station, and claims that Gacy drove him home, tried to sexually assault him. The boy didn't show up to testify, so the charges were dropped. And on June 22, 1971, Gacy was arrested again, charged with aggravated sexual battery and reckless conduct, when a young boy reported that Gacy flashed him a badge and got him into his car and forced him to perform oral sex. Because of the time and the lack of interdepartmental communication, the Iowa Parole Board was oblivious of Gacy's run-ins with the law. Gacy's parole ended on October 18, 1971, and a month later his Iowa conviction record was sealed. So now Gacy is living with a clean slate. With the financial help of his mother, Gacy purchased a house at 8213 West Somerdale Avenue in Norwood Park, Illinois, living there with his mother. In August of 1971, Gacy reconnected with a girl that he dated in high school named Carol Hoff. Carol had 2 children from her previous marriage, and soon after, Carol and her 2 young daughters moved in with Gacy. Gacy's mother moved out, and on July 1st, 1972, the 2 were married. Gacy was friendly with his neighbors. He would shovel their walkway. Everyone quickly knew him. He would host annual summer parties that would be attended by hundreds of people, including bigwig politicians and business acquaintances. Gacy was said to be open with his wife that he was bisexual. And in 1971, Gacy started a part-time business, a contracting business called PDM Contractors, painting, decoration, and maintenance. It started off small. He would do minor repairs, some interior design, and he was still working as a cook during the day. And by 1973, his business was so lucrative that he could just quit cooking and work for himself full-time. In 1977, he was a supervisor for PE Systems, a firm that mostly did drugstore remodels. He was working multiple projects at once. He was traveling. And by 1978, PDM's annual revenue was over $200,000 a year. By 1975, Gacy and his wife's intimacy that had been declining completely halted. After he had sex with her on Mother's Day that year, he told her that that was it. That was the last time they would ever have sex. He started spending most nights out, saying that he was working or some sort of business thing. Carol would see him bringing boys into the detached garage. She would find men's wallets or IDs in the house and gay pornography. And if she'd confront Gacy, he would say, "That's none of your business." During her time living in the house, she complained of how bad the smell was coming from the crawl space. She went away for a few days, and when she came back, the smell was gone, and said that Gacy had poured some concrete down there. Needless to say, this marriage didn't last. She divorced him in 1976. The upstanding member of the community, Gacy, was involved in local Democratic politics. He was invited to join the Norwood Park Township Street Lighting Committee, and he became precinct captain. He was appointed director of Chicago's yearly Polish parade. He even met and was photographed with First Lady Rosalind Carter while wearing an S-pin from the Secret Service. He joined the local Moose Club. There he learned of a Jolly Joker Clown Club, which he joined, and he created Patches and Pogo the Clown. Pogo was a happy clown, while Patches was more serious. He would dress up like his alter egos, Pogo or Patches the Clown, and perform for kids' birthday parties on weekends or hospitals or fundraisers. He wasn't getting paid for this. He enjoyed performing. I lack knowledge of clowns, but his mouth was very scary. It looks almost like bat-like. And I'm sorry for cutting this into parts because I try to keep them all together, but this is a lot of information to try to squeeze into one episode. So this is where I'm going to cut it for part 1. I'll end it on a quote of Gacy's. "Clowns can get away with murder." Well, thank you everybody for listening. Till next time. Bye.
Thank you for listening. If you need more content or just want to help support the podcast, head on over to patreon.com and search "Ouch, was that a ghost?" If you need some snazzy merch, you can find it at crowdmade.com by searching "Ouch, was that a ghost?" If you have a story you'd like to share, you can email it to ouchwasthataghost@yahoo.com. You can also find us on Facebook and all the other social media platforms under "Ouch, was that a ghost?"
Help me.
All links can also be found on ouchwasthataghost.com.